Hi, it's Chris Titley here, and we're live at the Sports Strategy Summit at the Brisbane Convention Centre, and I'm joined by Jonathon Flegg from Freshwater Strategy. Jono, great to catch up again, mate.
Always happy to be with you, Chris. It's a long-lived
Turn it up.
relationship, and I love a chat, mate.
You
love a chat.
Well, you've just come off and the panel. You're fresh off the panel. What happened at the panel? What did you talk about?
Oh, we were talking about legacy. So the timing is pretty sweet for a legacy conversation right now. I think we're kind of into the build phase with the venues, which was kind of the number one priority when the new government came in Queensland. But so we've been kicking around a few ideas on what legacy means, but the litmus test for what legacy is, according to our worldview, is that it needs to be an economic dividend or a new industry or new opportunities that it's creating for Queensland decades after the actual event. Because let's be honest, the event's only going to go for a few weeks, and if we're going to spend all this money to bring all these people to Queensland, what's the lasting impact that's positive for Queensland? So that's the bit we've been agonising over.
So when it comes to legacy, you probably don't see the results probably until a decade after, which is, in hindsight or looking back, and we have to look forward to build that. How do we think about that?
Yeah, so some of the benefits are going to be immediate. Right, so probably the first big idea that we're running with at the moment is, if you look at the numbers around Queensland, like we like to think of Queensland as the home of Australian sport. It just rolls off the tongue. When you
someone that lives in New South Wales, by the way.
There you go, but born and bred in Queensland, mate. So that's just my cross to bear. But the point around Queensland is that despite the fact so many of the great athletes come from Queensland, there's such a great fan culture in Queensland. All the kind of metrics are in Queensland's favour. The one metric that's not in Queensland's favour is we are actually underweight on the number of Tier 1 sports franchises in Queensland. So we've got a bit over 20% of the national population, but we have nowhere near 20% of the number of franchises. That's just an historical legacy. A lot of the leagues were down south, and we kind of came into the southern leagues, in particular AFL and NRL context. But if we're going to be this great state here in Queensland with all this amazing sports content, we're going to spend billions building these new venues. Who are the legacy tenants that we can put into those venues? They're going to provide, week-on-week economic benefits for the state. So at Freshwater, we think at a minimum there's an opportunity for 6 new franchises in Queensland. If we look at the Tier 1 sports, so NRL, AFL, Super Rugby, A-League, Super Netball, and NBL, right? They're the big ones. We think at a minimum there's room for 6 new teams in Queensland across those leagues, and they can go in those new venues, which would be great.
Yeah, a minimum of 6. That's interesting. My head's going where, who, how, etc.
Yeah, it's an open question.
Your job,
yeah,
right?
that's right. We've that's a high-level analysis in relation to that. But if we take a look at what the Dolphins have done for not only Brisbane, but for the Moreton Bay region, for the Sunshine Coast region, and then obviously their footprint extends the whole way across the state. That was the economic and almost civic impact of just the introduction of one new team to the competition. Imagine what 6 can do.
Yeah.
And as I said, we're underweight in Queensland at the moment. The room, based on huge population growth in Queensland, is here. So let's do it.
Absolutely, yeah.
My final point on that, worth saying too, is that all those leagues at the moment are somewhere on the arc of expansion, right? They're all hungry for more content. They're somewhere along that process of looking for new opportunities to secure new franchises. So the leagues are ready, the population's ready, we're underweight, the venues will be there, all the pieces are in place. So really, I think it's got to be a program of government. So we want to have these new franchises in Queensland. WA government actually has some really interesting policies on how they facilitate new teams, like with the Bears. How there's certain concessions that are offered to incubate and start new clubs, knowing that new clubs struggle in the first few years until they build the commerciality of the overall enterprise. So it's a real opportunity for Queensland government in particular.
If we look at sport 5 or 6 years ago, there weren't magic rounds and there weren't gather rounds and there weren't like live golf and things like that in Adelaide and the calendar of sport in Australia. Those types of events and the leagues and the forward thinking around that. How important is that? And looking to Queensland next year, what are you excited about in terms of the calendar and things that are happening here in the state?
Well, the Rugby World Cup's the big kahuna, right? And that's obviously nationwide. But I think that's the test bed. We need to start having a mindset of how do we host these things nationally. And I think that one plus the Rugby League World Cup as well provide two ample opportunities for us to test some of these major event capabilities. But more broadly, if we're talking about legacy from the Olympics, which is what we want to achieve, we need to start thinking about them like right now. A lot of these things take time. They require large investments. They require all commercial partnerships to crystallise as well. So I would say the timing is right. The state government's issued Queensland Spirit only a week and a bit ago, which is the Queensland government's policy in relation to legacy. The Lord Mayor's put out a policy recently too, so the timing's really sweet for these conversations. It just requires a level of creative thinking, because for most people, they haven't encountered an Olympic moment before. City planners, policymakers, commercial entities, athletes, everyone who's involved in making a Games happen, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And so I think we just need to have a creative conversation about what legacy means and how we can lock it in for Queensland.
Speaking of creative, when it comes to like the name of a franchise, how long do you spend on that?
A name for a franchise?
Yeah, like the Dolphins. Like coming up with the Dolphins as an example.
Well, the Dolphins was kind of easy because they've been kicking the pigskin around since 1947.
Rupert McCall on the hill and all that sort of stuff has been floating around. But let's call it obviously Tassie and the AFL team.
The Dolphins is a good one, a good case study, because not only did it have the history and heritage which you were unlocking with the name the Dolphins, but Dolphins appeal to the animal appeals to a wide range of people. So you did a bit of market
research on that?
We did. So not only male audiences, but in particular female audiences and children, they resonate with dolphins. So it was just about getting the level of aggression right in the dolphin. So, majestic enough to bring in, the broader fan base, but still have that little bit of, aggression.
What about another Brisbane team?
Incumbent on rugby league.
Another Brisbane team. We've got the Heat. We've got the Bullets, the Broncos. We've got the Bandits. What's another name for Brisbane, you reckon?
Another name for Brisbane? Well, we're working on a few projects at the moment in that space.
The Lions. I forgot about the Lions. Of course, I'm wearing the Lions kit. How did I forget the Lions? Anyway, so we sort of got the Jungle, the Broncos, the Heat, the Weather, the Bandits. Don't really know what that is. The Bullets. Don't really know what that is. There you go. Come on the spot. Another Brisbane team.
I think there's probably a premium on novelty and uniqueness in naming.
The bananas, like the Savannah Bananas.
Savannah Bananas. I have seen the Savannah Bananas. So
the Brisbane Bananas.
That's a bit like the Harlem Globetrotters, a bit theatrical. But Jack Jumpers in Tasmania.
Yeah, I wouldn't have picked that.
There is a bit of a premium on uniqueness.
The Jules is a new WNBL team.
And just from IP rights, you start getting into the names like Sharks and Dolphins and regular types of brand names in sport. It does start to run counter with global brands often. You'll find that with the London Broncos in London, and the Denver Broncos, who have got IP
and the
sewn up all around the world. We obviously worked on the London Broncos.
Broncos.com's a fought hard battle.
That's right, yeah. So we worked on London Broncos, kind of conceived of the new brand with the London Broncos team. But obviously Denver Broncos, they're US, they've got a lot of that IP locked up around the world. So you've got to navigate that if you've got a kind of a more mainstay name.
True.
Personally, my preference is for a bit of uniqueness and creativity.
Like the Queensland Bulls, Chicago Bulls. Yeah, there's a lot of things. You're right. So we could talk about that for hours. But, Jono, what's one thing you want to get out of today?
Look, I think it's just about connections. I think it's about the fact that legacy conversations need to happen now. It requires a range of voices, both commercial and policymakers, so government, public and private. It needs a lot of people to come together. I think we need to look at what previous Olympics have done well and not done well. We've looked at some of the stuff around the Vancouver Winter Olympics previously, and they had a thing called Legacy Now, which was about actually creating partnerships between government and local organisations to create civic infrastructure and opportunities well outside the host city. And I think for us, Queensland and the Games in 2032 is a very decentralised exercise. I believe it's the most decentralised of any Olympics ever. So how do we freshen up and get all of our cities, our regions and towns all ready for this moment, so not just Brisbane? That's probably the other thing that we're thinking a lot about. Just super pleased to be here. It's a great crowd, first time ever. And the place is packed. There's literally standing room only.
Mate, that's right. I was standing at the back there of the session before. A couple of 100 people, 300 people maybe in in Brisbane all talking sport and business. How good.
That's it, yeah. Well, I mean, Jason had a great idea to come up with this initiative in the first instance, and we'd just be happy to be part of it, really.
Excellent. Jono, thanks, mate. Thanks for the chat. Always a pleasure, and looking forward to catching up later.
You too. See you, Chris.